Main character energy is about reminding yourself that you are the main character of your story, but not just the main character, you're the author.
Can we go higher? Can we go higher?
Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm so glad to be here, especially since Esther is back with me today. Last time, if you remember, I had to do this solo, which is all right. It's okay, but it's not as good, when you don't have your partner, your trusty sidekick with you, or I think I'm the sidekick actually, but I'm so glad that Esther is good now and we're here together and this is amazing. And today we have an incredible guest. We have Victoria Carrington Chavez with us today, who is a great friend, a friend of the show, friend of all that we do. And so we're so thankful to have her here with us today. Victoria, do you want to say hello?
Hi, everybody. It's an honor and an absolute privilege to be here. I love the work that you both put out and how you just make the world a better place by just being yourselves. I feel like the more that we do that, the kinder and gentler and just powerful and strong that the world becomes. So
I think that's a nugget of the message that we tried to basically put out to the world, right? That the world is a better place when you can show up as yourself, right? And I think a lot of the work that we do is trying to uncover that and unpack that for people, right? So that's amazing. You're here today, not just because you're a friend of the show, but because you do amazing work too. And I think it's really interesting because I think one of the hard things in terms of having people be able to show up as their authentic and strongest self is that oftentimes people lack a way to describe it or a way to identify it. So I know that you've done an incredible TED Talk. I know that you and I have had the chance to talk about, actually all three of us have had the chance to talk about some of the work that you do. So do you want to, I don't want to steal your thunder. So do you want to talk about it a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that I love to do is play with archetypes. And so archetypes are a lot of fun. And if you're wondering what an archetype is, you've probably heard of one. You just might not know that that's what it's called. So when I say words like hero or villain, or even sage, mentor, we all kind of know what that is. But there also, what's really cool is that there might be different definitions that are subjective based upon that. But there's at the same time a universal truth to it, and then an individual or more or smaller group truth to it. So I do a lot of work in archetypes and helping people understand their own main character energy. And all of this connects to story. And anybody who's followed my work knows that I love a good story. Storytelling is how we as humans have communicated, connected, shared wisdom since the dawn of time. So stories today still have that power, that depth, that ability to connect. That was one of the things with my TED Talk, was using my own story to inspire people to be their authentic self and be themselves outside of the boxes or the binaries that society or our own past versions of our story put ourselves in. That's a bit of my work.
So just because I think there are a lot of people out there who might not have the depth in terms of what an archetype is and how it relates to a story, can you give a little bit deeper background on really more generally, what is an archetype? What does it have to do with a story?
Or if you want, I can chime in and then Victoria, because I just want to give a shout out to Victoria because that's the thing. I think we are all that are listening here. We're all trailblazers, change makers. We are our hero in our own story.
We should be.
Yeah, we are. Right. And so I think the biggest thing that I think why I'm doing this show is and why we're doing this today with Victoria is because Victoria helps you unlock who is that character you're living? Who is that main character that you are? What is your hero story? And so when Victoria did this with me, it was during last year, right? Actually, we had done it in pieces for years, actually. But last year, with everything that went on with, DEIA, the humanitarian crisis, we had to pivot completely. I remember I was really lost. And I'm like, I don't know who my character is anymore, right? Who am I this? And then I remember with Victoria, we looked at all the different archetypes. And then all of a sudden, it was like, oh my God, there was this movie I saw since I was a kid, The Sword and the Stone. And I'm like, I love that movie. But the thing was, I couldn't put two and two together because Arthur's masculine. He's a male, right? And so I was always thinking about, man, I don't fit a Disney princess. But then I was like, yes, yes, Arthur. And Arthur's journey is that, he doesn't know how to use his voice. He's a people pleaser. He's very dominated by like, everyone around him, his siblings and everyone. But he has Merlin. And Merlin comes and is kind of like this wisdom intuition. And through Victoria, we unpack that actually on both. I'm like Arthur and Merlin in one. And then the journey of Arthur, right? He has to go, he goes and becomes the king, right? He's chosen by the universe, but he doesn't know what he's doing yet. And I could relate to that. And then, but he needs a round table, right? And so I could keep going, but I think that alone was like so powerful because I was like, wow, I need a round table. Wow, I've always had this intuition. Wow, I am Arthur's story. And then King Arthur went to go do all these amazing things later, but it was more about the origin. So I'm going to pass it back to Victoria because I'm just one example of how you unpack it. But I think it's really important for all the listeners to think like, what is that? So Victoria, I would love for you to guide, like, how do people find out who they are and what their hero journey is? Because it's so key for us when we keep trailblazing and change, being change makers, to know what this power is that we have inside of us that we can unlock.
So yeah, Esther, thank you so much. And it was just a joy to be able to reflect that back to you and see you in your brilliance and see you as a leader. And so when we look at archetypes, so take, for example, King Arthur is the sovereign or the ruler archetype. And so when we look at archetypes, there can be universal truths and characteristics to that we know as a collective of unconscious. And so a great example is a hero. So generally, a hero is somebody who has morals and values. When you're writing a story and you put, I want this character to be the hero, they have morals, they have values, they have ethics, they have something driving them and guiding them. Generally want to do good for a collective or a group. So the archetype is, what are those general characteristics, personas, traits, behaviors of a character? And so an archetype is one way to look at it. Another way I like to look at archetypes is astrology is another version of archetypes. So when you say, oh, I have this, like, for example, I'm a Taurus sun, and Taurus suns, I do not claim to be an astrologer. Shout out to Alona. Like, there are very talented astrologers out there, but in terms of story and looking at astrology as a story, okay, if my character is a Taurus archetype, so these are the general characteristics of that archetype. For example, Tauruses are known for loving food. I happen to very much love food. So it's a way we can use archetypes. A way we can use archetypes is to see ourselves and to have that mirror and that reflection and to better understand ourselves. Like, this is a part of what we call narrative psychology. Archetypes, the term and how we know it today, was coined by Carl Jung, who a lot of people can be familiar with his work in terms of he really coined these like main 15, but there are so many ways that archetypes show up in story as these different kind of characteristics that we can build upon, that we can see ourselves in, and we can reflect. And what it does when we as trailblazers use archetypes is that it communicates something universal. So if you're, for example, wanting to step more into leadership, and sovereign archetypes or ruler, sometimes these words become interchangeable, but the intention, the essence is still there. You're still, sovereignty is about leading. It's about creating a kingdom for people. That's what's fun about them, is that there's a simultaneous universal resonance that other people can connect with and can feel with. And this is why using archetypes can be so powerful, because it's also about an emotional connection. It's also about the subconscious connection. But at the same time, you can make it your own story, your own version of that. Just like kind of going back to astrology, I'm a Taurus, but I have other aspects there that might mean that, well, I can still be stubborn, I can still be moved, especially by water energy. So I feel like archetypes can be a way to remind us of our strengths and also a way to show us where we might have growth edges. And what's cool about them is that we can choose at any point, especially in points of transition, a different archetype to help us move into another level, especially as we're in the in-between.
So I have a question for you then. Like you've mentioned a couple of times, and I know one of the things that you talk about is main character energy.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you transition from from the archetype discussion into main character energy?
Yeah, so that's a great question. With so Esther's story and I agree with you. You are not only the main character, you're the hero in your story, especially if you're a trailblazer, if you might be a cycle breaker first, any one of those, you're doing something new and different. And it's gonna be uncomfortable. You're gonna feel like you have no idea what you're doing. And you're going to have self-doubt. Perfectionism is something that a lot of us might struggle with. And then imposter syndrome, which is super normal when you're moving into a new space. And then on top of that, if you have any sort of societal nuance in your identity. And I say it that way because we have some societal rules, especially in a Western colonized society, of what roles people should be in based upon things like gender. So if you're outside that box or binary in any way, your self-doubt might get louder as you move into something new and different, especially in leadership. So main character energy is about reminding yourself that you are the main character of your story, but not just the main character, you're the author. And so if you see yourself as a leader, even if nobody around you, and that's the power, like trailblazers, we're brave. We're moving forward. We trust our visions. We trust our instincts. And then we get out into the wild there, which is the in between unknown. And that's when all that doubt kicks in. But main character energy just gets us back to ourselves, our belief, or the thing that put us forward in the first place. And it just helps us stick to that vision when the wild can get loud, when the doubt, all of those things creep in and help us push through to the other side and really blaze that trail. And that's what I love about that main character energy, because then we step into it, then we embody it. One of the most well-known stories of main character energy, or using an alter ego or creating a different identity, still based upon your own, is Beyonce created Sasha Fierce to help her get through stage fright. And so that's a lot of my work, is using archetypes and narrative psychology and creating your own narrative to say, who do you want to be in your story? Much like Beyonce was like, I had stage fright when I was a kid. I created this character and that helped me get through it. Because I truly can't imagine a world where Beyonce has stage fright. You watch her perform and she's like in it. And that it shows you the power of mindsets, right? And when you are, I say it in the wild a lot, is the part of the unknown, because as a trailblazer, there will be an unknown. You're moving into something that's new. So it feels like you're out there in the wild, and you
Yeah.
need something to ground you back to yourself. And that's truly what main character energy helps you do.
I also want to put another plug too. Like, let's go into the Arthur story, right? It's that when Victoria helped me understand, that I was like the Arthur, and Arthur has, like we said, like even the main character has different phases. And I was back into being like his teenage phase, right? Because sometimes I felt like I've lived Arthur multiple times, right? And the tools that the main character uses are key too, right? Because a lot of our
Mm,
stuff's like about like, okay, what's the like what can help you in this journey? And I think by understanding that Arthur couldn't do it alone with the round table, when I was going through that uncertainty,
yes.
I made the whole circle. I made the whole round table. We actually went to Punta Cana. I saw Kingsley. Kingsley introduced me to
Yay.
Marilyn. I got extra things. Then I realized also, okay, and we can go into this, Victoria, you can go into how you may have a character, but you may have like a blind spot with that character. I realized that character doesn't have a lot of destroyer energy, right? Like a lot
Mm,
of good boundaries. But then I realized that Paul's, he has a lot of that. So I was like, oh, Paul can help me with boundaries. So when I was making that round table, like who can help me in this next step of the unknown? Like, what are we going to pivot to? What are we going to go to? And then by understanding that character that I've always been, and I wanted to
mhm.
continue the journey of with Arthur. I'm like, I need my round table. I need to really tap into my intuition and trust. And I needed like Merlin has an owl, right? And so I was like,
Yes.
Paul's my owl and Merlin's my intuition. And then I have a round table of advisors. But that helped us get to that next step, right?
Yeah.
It may sound abstract maybe right now to the listeners, but it's so key, like you were saying with Beyonce, because understanding that I needed those tools, I brought those people together. I started doing work with the intuition work. I started then, putting all the pieces like Arthur, and then we had a successful pivot. And now, even this year, as we're building the technology to help people, I'm tapping into that again. I'm like, okay, who now? I'm going, like, that's what I'm saying. You go multiple times in the same character. Now I'm like, okay, I need another round table for this technology. I need to trust where it's going, the intuition, and tap into it. And I need, again, Merlin out, and also work on the inner Arthur, like, child work, right? That's
Yeah.
still struggling with because everything we're overcoming, right? We're still overcoming. The things that I forgot my phrase. I use my own phrase, but the things that we always struggle with, right? We keep overcoming it. And so I'm still doing that. But I found this so helpful. Like you said, it's like a framework for you to understand what is it, the things that you need
Yeah.
during this time, because we're always serving, that we forget about that even in these stories, when the person is serving and being the first and going out there and doing things, whatever, we also need help. And all these characters got help in some sort of way and had tools along the way that helped them. So what are they for you?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. You want to say
Absolutely.
something?
I was thinking it's
I
always
see him. He's chewing on it.
you don't know me. No, it's always interesting to hear how Esther talks and how she thinks, because I function on a slightly different wavelength a lot of the times, you know what I mean? And so like
Different character.
so like no, completely very different character from yours, right? And but one of the things that I loved about it is sort of the creating the space to accept who you always knew that you were,
Part.
but never allowed yourself to go there. You know what I mean? So like for me, a lot of my energy came out as very, very protective, motherly, and at the same time, a lot of like the professor like type things, right? And that sort of the wisdom and all of that. And I think that it is a version of myself that I've always known to be true, and that I've always mentally fought against in some way. And so to have had it placed in that way and shown for the power that it has, I think was really, really important for me.
And
So
how you can be characters in other people's stories. You are the owl in my story. My Merlin gets mad and goes away, like the intuition, then comes back, but the owl's always there.
Yeah.
And so, like, I feel like that's you. You're always steady present, right? And then I'm a different character in your story, right? Always being like, we need to always move ahead, and the vision and this. And so I like that, like, Victoria, you helped to realize that too, right? We have our own character in our story, but we also play a character in other people's story. So I love
Absolutely.
this stuff.
Absolutely. Good stories. And when I say good stories, and storytelling is having a moment right now, but forever since I can remember, I've been doing the work of storytelling. And storytelling isn't just telling a story. It's embodying, it's creating connection and resonance. And the formula of good stories have characters, they have conflict, and they have connection. And you can, for the most part, take just about any story and break down those things. And the reason there's that conflict is what creates that evolution or that growth. So if we scale back and we look at us as spiritual beings having this human experience, or however resonates with people, but either way, having these moments in our lifetime of evolution, having some idea of the characters in that scene, including ourselves and those supporting characters, and then what's the conflict, and then what's the connections that are going to move us through or come out on the other side of that conflict, and what do we need? And sometimes we don't always know, and that's the beautiful thing of stories is when we see ourselves in something, it helps give us those answers and those tools. And I think of children, and there's always that thing children do where they're like, I'm that one, I'm that one, I'm that one. Is because we're coming from a more pure subconscious kind of place. Like we're less indoctrinated by the world, and the world hasn't told us who they think we should be as much yet. That when we're reflecting, we're saying, that's me. We're seeing parts of ourselves and piecing all of those parts together into our own main character story while simultaneously being supporting characters in the other people's stories is how we work together as a collective to build each other up, to move forward, to limits, because that is the point of the story, is that the where you start in the story is not where you end in the story. I think that if somebody wrote a story and the main character stayed the same, and sometimes there's those nuancy pieces that happen, but it wouldn't be as interesting. King Arthur's story wouldn't be as interesting if he just stayed a squire, right? It's the evolution, it's the expansion that makes it exciting and interesting. But of course, those things can have those challenges. So having people around you to support you are really key. There's another story that's like popping up when we think of like the hero's journey and Joseph Campbell. And I know Earl speaks really brilliantly about Joseph Campbell and the hero's journey, because a hero's journey is just some framework for talking about the evolution. There's also the heroine's journey. There's a couple of frameworks, but Frozen is a common story of a hero's journey. And so Elsa tried to do it alone, wasn't as successful. She needed her Anna. She needed somebody to support her in that. And so it's cool to kind of think. And one of the ways that I look at main character energy work is, yes, who are you in your story? And that's why I ask questions of like, who'd you connect with when you were a child? And what values are there? And then who's supporting you? Because that's also really key. Anytime we're going through any sort of expansion or moving past limits, there is going to be discomfort, and we need our round table. We need our people to support us and to help us move to the other side of that conflict. The last thing that I'll say on this is there's a term out there that I really love called Sonder. And Sonder is a concept of that you are having a main character experience in your story. You recognize that you're the main character and that your story or peripheral does kind of move from your perspective, but also everybody else is having their own main character experience. And a way that I've been just an analogy that I really resonate with in that is that it's like the stars. All of the stars shine in their own brightness and uniqueness. And that's what makes the night sky really beautiful. If it was all the same level of light, we wouldn't look in awe. But it's the fact that all of the stars shine brightly in their own way. They're all shining, and then they can all be in constellation with each other, shining at their frequencies. And that's you in your story, because you are the main character shining as brightly as possible, but also admiring other people around you shining as brightly as they can as well.
I love that. And you know what came to mind too as you were talking to me? That to us, sorry, is you mentioned three things of a story: connection, and conflict. 3 C's. The thing is, like, as people are listening to this, they're like, okay, yes, stories help you in your journey and all that. I would say it even goes further than that. If you're in a job, if you're pitching an idea, if you're running a business, you have to be able to tell your story and your value proposition. And so as you were talking about those 3 things, I was thinking about pitches. Paul and I do pitch coaching, and, we just finished a huge cohort right now. And I was thinking about it. They struggle the most with 2 things: value proposition and story, right? But the story, because people go into this thing of chronological. And I'm sure all of us have been completely, guilty of it, because we've been taught like the traditional resume format of being like, this year we did this year we did that, this year we did that, right? And so when we talk to people about our story, about even what we're creating, or even if you go to a boss and you want to like do an idea, we're so used to being like, well, quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, or when they tell your story, in 1990 I did this, and then 5 years later I did this. Okay. It doesn't resonate, right? Like the best people like Oprah and all these big speakers, she may be controversial, but she's an amazing speaker. They don't do that, right? They go into a moment in time and they do exactly what you're saying, Victoria. They go straight into the moment in time of a character, whether it's themselves or someone that impacted them. They go into that place of what happened in that moment, that conflict. And then they go into so it's like the character, that, and the connection moment, right? Like what was like that light bulb, or it could be with a person or like connection with themselves. And those are the ones that kill it, because you are able to go in and experience it with them. Like, and it wasn't until I was able to do that, this is also, I was also giving a big plug to you, that I was able to really think about what was my pivotal story, right? And so like the pivotal story we're using right now with the app is like my dad's. Like it was, and it's a story I have in the book, but now I go way deeper into it, into the 3 C's you're saying. It was, when I was a kid, right? He lost his funding because he couldn't articulate his value. It didn't matter how smart he was. It didn't matter he was doing a PhD. In the moment when they're like, we're going to cut someone off, he didn't go and be like, my stuff matters because of X. And this is why you have to keep me or find other money to keep me. He just kind of, he couldn't have the words. So then what? Then he left. Then he lost his funding mid-school year. I'm here like a 10-year-old kid moving mid-school year with my mom 8 months pregnant. We lost her insurance. We had to go live with other family. We go into, financial distress, right? Because of one moment. And so that is the conflict.
Yep.
But the character is then, that stayed with me. I lived it. I suffered it for for those 3 years and beyond. Seeing him later turns into depression, right? Because he can't ever do it. He tries later and doesn't. It leads me to going to the same school, getting there and pitching for him and getting him re-enrolled, and then he graduates with me. So, but that's the 3 C's, because then that shows also my character, right? Not just his character, my character.
Yeah.
The conflict he had, and then the conflict it created in me. And then the connection we had with each other, and then the connection with his purpose and my own purpose.
Yeah.
But then that ties us to why we're creating this app about helping people with their value proposition, because it makes or breaks you. So, but if I were to give that to you chronological, like I do in my book, it's not the same effect. And if I don't do those 3 C's, right? If I haven't done that work of who I am as a main character, of who my dad was as a main character, of who we want to be now as characters, we would have never made that full circle. So like, to the listeners, I want to say, this is not just a nice to have this work. It's essential. Like if you want to keep having influence and impact, you got to do this main character analysis. And of course, you got to do it with Victoria. And Earl's already been on the show. I mean, both of you create this puzzle that's like, both of you, it's like amazing, because it's more than just you and helping you. It's about also you having more impact, influence, being able to make a difference in the world. I mean, that's what this show's about, right? Make a difference, make money, all of it, right? Because the more we have, the more we can help. But yeah, so I just want to put that too, because it has so many applications that are just, it's just necessary.
It really is. And thank you for that, Esther. And yes, like those pieces of character and the conflict and the connection are so key, especially in pitching. And so I am currently finishing up a program with Goldman Sachs, and we had a pitch day. And one of the things that I noticed is that a lot of small business owners did not know how to pitch, did not know how to talk about their business in a way that leveraged their character. And so when we think about character, that also connects to values. Like, what do you value?
Can I put a very plug in there? Goldman Sachs needs our app. Just saying.
Yes. Yes.
I'm going to put that in there right here on this podcast, because
put it out.
The whole point of this app, and they need us.
Yes. And I watch, right, pitching. And some of that character too is a lot of times we don't, and this is why I love your work, Be Act Change, is that we don't always as characters see the value, that we're the value, part of the value in our value proposition. And so my work with you, when I found your book, Creating Your Limitless Life, that was some of the work that I did the last couple of years, was to be like, oh, no, this is my value. Like, I have purpose. I have some purpose beyond what my job title is. And a lot of times we're so used to saying what we do as a job, as opposed to our values, our essence, who we are and how we show up in the world, no matter what job title we have. And that's so much the work that you and Paul have done, is really help people see the value, because that's got to come first. But then leveraging that conflict and creating alignment, right? Because if you're pitching to somebody like Goldman Sachs, like, you have to have intentionality with that conflict. A lot of us have had a variety of conflicts, but where is the intentionality with that conflict? Is it going to make sense to your audience, right? These are theater rules. I go to a Shakespeare quote sometimes when I think of these as all the world's a stage. And these are theater rules. Know your audience. So when you speak to that conflict, and then the third one is the connection. So the connection, like, how was that solved? Who did you connect with, or who do you need to connect with? And a lot of times we can't, practicing your character involves other people. You need community, you need connection, you need people to practice that character and reflect back. And so I feel like, to your point, like, that's when you practice those and you show up, you really can change your life. You can change your whole entire life at any point. And that's where it kind of gets fun, because then you're rewriting not just a story, you're rewriting your story, or you're rewriting a story for previous generations, much like you just described. You help rewrite the story for your dad. And that's trailblazing, cycle breaking, first generation work, which is, as I like to say, very sacred work.
Yeah. And as you were talking too, like you were saying, right? It's like a theater of the audience. Then it's next level of being able to then tie your story to why your thing exists, your idea, your business, your role, right? Like even the whole PhD thing he needed that, the story. And then tying it into how it ties to his work, and then how it ties to the ask you want to make. Like this is an essential thing that all of us have to learn when we're doing that, because you're going to need, right? Like you said, people, money, whatever it is, people to help you. And this is where the story comes to like anchor that, and then anchors your value proposition, and then it anchors your ask. So this is like essential work. But so I love like you have this framework that gets people to start thinking about it, right? Start to be like doing that initial step, like, well, what is it? What is my story? Who am I? And I always go back to, once I understood it was Arthur, I was then able to be like, then it wasn't until then that I was able to unpack what was that key story and that key moment in those 3 C's. I know you have something to say. I'm
always
here. I feel it.
I don't want to take the conversation backwards. But one of the interesting things that when like you and I picked up on totally different things in the character conflict and connection piece, and I'll tell you why. Because one of the things that Victoria said as she was describing it was that basically if there's no conflict, the story's not that interesting, right?
Yeah.
So one of the things that we talk about all the time, or maybe it's just me, one of the things I talk about all the time is what I call big universe and small universe.
Yeah, that's yours. You're genius.
So when I heard, and oftentimes what is the catalyst for someone moving out of small universe thinking into bigger universe thinking is some sort of conflict, right? And what we see so often is that people try to avoid what economists call shocks, right? People try to avoid those conflicts, but when you avoid the conflict, what happens? Nothing. It's not an interesting story, right? You don't grow. You don't have that opportunity. You don't give yourself that opportunity to go from small universe to big universe, right?
Wouldn't you say, though, that's a type of conflict, though?
What is?
That, like stopping yourself from growing. So I was just saying, I think there is overlap in our stories.
Yes.
I think we're saying the same thing. It's that.
Yeah.
Like, that is a type of internal conflict of you trying to avoid going in there
Sure.
and staying in there, right?
Sure.
And your character is one that's being resistant to growth.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Resistance, yeah.
And then we talk a lot about like the round table, but also ideas of resilience and and so you said connection, and I think about sometimes the connections. Like for me, one of the biggest connections that I think I'm still working on, but that I've had to work on to make is sort of a heart-mind connection internally. You know what I mean? Like I know that I let my mind dominate.
Coherence.
Exactly, and I don't sort of allow enough of the heart to do enough of the deciding and the feeling and the intuitive.
I'm sure, Victoria, I can find the archetype for you.
Yes.
The one that's like struggling to listen to their heart.
Yes.
There's a character in there.
There is a character.
And your mind, and then I feel like that's a little bit of like I can feel some Bell energy there, and then probably some other ones.
I mean, from what I've read, that's one of the things that comes with, for example, like the sage energy, because the sage takes a lot of that, and it's a very cerebral kind of an approach to things. You know what I mean? So I know that my conflict is to get out of my head and open to the heart and gut more, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
to yourself.
To myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You open it to others. Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
But it's super cool, right? And but anyways.
But I wanted to shift gears for a second, because one of the other things that you talked about was children. Right. And sort of this purity that children have in terms of how they approach the world, and, you know, their possibilities are endless to them. I think it's amazing. For example, when you ask almost any kid, real small kid, can you sing? Yes, I can sing. Can you dance? Yes, I can dance, you know, and at some point society sort of beats shame into them. Right. And they're like, no, I don't sing. No, I don't
it's
dance.
not good
Whatever.
enough.
Or whatever it is. Right. And one of the things that we do, and some of the work that we do, and I say that because we've done it with children, we've done it with professionals, we've done it with ambassadors, with CEOs, is basically this approach. And I'm going to let Esther take over at this point, but soon, because I know she's going to want to. But it's basically, we have a question that we ask as
Oh,
people,
yes. We want
right?
we want to do it,
And a
Victoria.
big piece of it in the end, I think, is getting people in touch with that sort of inner child, that dream that they always had, and that spark that is still alive in you, but that maybe for lots of reasons, and it's not about fault or blame, but for sometimes we end up pushing those to the side, and it's bringing people back into that moment. But the interesting thing is, how do you get people to trust you with their story, right? And how do you get people to be authentic in a way that allows them to tell their story,
I mean, I'm sure, Victoria, you
Yeah.
probably, before we go into the question, I would love to hear from you, because I think in like the pitch sessions we do with these cohorts, it's very emotional because they
Mhm.
want to avoid telling their story. They
Mhm.
want to make it about general, imagine a world where da
Mhm.
da da. So they want to start,
Mhm.
or they want to do like
Yeah.
something completely different, not about them, because it's a really emotional to, and plus you always, like, you have these voices in your mind that tell you your story's not special and all that. So anyways, I'd love to hear from that
Yeah.
first before we go into the question. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Thank you for that. And so, yeah, I mean, in helping get people to trust me in telling their story is that I see them and I listen to them. A lot of times, the biggest thing we want in our story, and just as humans, is to be witnessed. And whether that's I see you, I hear you, and then affirm that, right? And a lot of times when we're doing this work as adults, we'll go back to some of those inner child places because there might be some wounds, not necessarily from our parents. Society also chimes in that space. And so saying I see you in this dream, in this vision, this version of yourself, and affirming that in all the ways that I can is one of the biggest ways, because that's what we need. And a lot of times, our inner child is kind of driving that space, and we look to kind of others. And so, Paul, to your point, I know you were talking about head and heart, and you and I, if I may, have had some conversations about patriarchy and positive patriarchy. Patriarchy in itself is about leadership that comes from fatherhood or from more masculine energy, which is not necessarily gendered. And not talking about patriarchy and how we might see it in society today, which is toxic. But you and I have talked a lot about the positive side of it. That leadership is really emotional. It's really sensitive. It's very caring. It's very kind. And that is not a story that holds up in culture and society, that masculine bodied folk should be sensitive and kind and caring and those things. And so I'm not surprised that some of your journey is about aligning something that you've been told your whole life to disconnect from. And so many times that's what we're doing. And that's what stories can help us bridge those gaps, is we're realigning something new and creating a new story, because they show us what's possible. The other piece with stories is that our brains are hardwired for stories. This is one reason why they work really well in our business. When we talk about our business, stories create connections. As humans, our brains are wired to remember stories as over data and facts. And that's just something that is ancestral and goes back to well before we had the internet, in the early 1900s, as the kids nowadays say, which makes me feel a little bit older than I am. So yeah, I think that, and the more that you get witnessed in the story you're creating or rewriting, the more empowered you are. And I think that that's an important piece in trust. So when somebody says, I wanted to do this thing when I was younger, and my parents didn't approve, and you're like, oh no, I could totally see you doing that. I like, here, do you want to, let's talk out some steps. Let's figure out, like, I hear you, I see you. Those things create so much trust and connection. And we will have enough people telling us we can't. The more we can go to the people who are telling us we can, especially those things that we know come from our heart, like that we're like, yeah, I really wanted to be that when I was a kid. It's the more we have people support that, the beautiful it becomes. And as you talked about your work in round table, that's your round table. At the same time, Paul, I was like, that's your round table. Those are your people.
Yep, I love that, because as you were talking, it made me think about why the pitch things that we do are so successful, because you create the safe space. Now that you said that, I'm like, oh, that's why it works. Because you create the safe space and then we have them unpack their story, and then everyone in the cohort is witnessing them and telling them how beautiful it is. And then that's all they need. Then after that, they start sharing their story. But I was like, wow, that's what it's about. It's about the witnessing. It's so beautiful. And there's so many of us that are so scared to share. Like, I know people who are like leading huge causes, right? Like freedom fighters and things with millions of people following them. And they're like, I struggle with sharing my story. I struggle with vulnerability. And it's because it's that. I think it's like, I don't know, fear of, I mean, I'll be fair. It's true. You start thinking, even with my story of my dad, sometimes when I share it, I worry about it, or sharing with my family, because you're like, oh, I don't want to hurt him. I don't want to make him feel weak. And so sometimes, and instead we have to go into the mind of like service. Like, right,
Mm-hmm.
it's not about me or him. It's about servicing others. And
Yeah.
which we've talked about, right? At the end of
Yeah.
the day, like that gives courage for people to
Yeah.
also help storage when it's not about you.
Yeah. To share your story and to show up in the world as your authentic self, as your unapologetic self, is an act of bravery, especially if you don't fit in the box or the binaries,
Yeah.
which many of us don't. Real talk, many of us don't. We are, as humans, are nuanced. We're complex. We're beautifully complex creatures. And so we don't
Mm-hmm.
fit in the basic boxes. And that's a lot
No.
of times in my client work when I'm like, you're not basic. Stop trying to be basic. And this is where the stories come in to be like, look at this badass character. This is you. So now like go be that. And I think this is where there's a lot of alignment in our work of like be, act, change. And this is one of those
Yes, exactly.
methodologies of how helping people, be it, act it, and then they
Mm-hmm.
change and they become it, right? But it has to start with belief. And a lot of times we're so used to bearing those beliefs that when we start to uncover them, it can feel really vulnerable. It can feel really scary. It can be overwhelming. It's, what if I get rejected? What if somebody judges me? What will people think of me? And some of that main character energy is regrounding in our own identity and conviction of ourselves to just say, this is who I am. And I trust that. I trust myself. And I recognize that there is a journey to that. And I've had my own journey, which is a lot of what my TED Talk is about.
Yeah.
Growing up multiracial and feeling like I've had to walk between multiple worlds. I grew up in a not diverse town either. So learning
Mm-hmm.
how to contain my own multitudes and my own variety of identities and
Yep.
embody all of it is what helped me be the main character in my own story. And I too have used different characters to reflect. I think Carmen Sandiego is mine that comes up of like, I want to travel the world. And sometimes when you're spinning out, like for me, I get overwhelmed in airports and I'm like spinning out at airport and listen. And I'm like, if what would Carmen Sandiego do? Is she going to be like, oh my gosh, I'm just going to stay here and cry? Or would she remember that she's a baddie that just travels the world, is like some of the best in her game? And but we all need that. This is why
Yeah.
we need other people, is because we forget, or these tools. The last thing that I'll say before your question is and this is why representation is so important for anyone who's listening. And we need to be seen, but we need to see ourselves as well out there in the wild. Michelle Buteau is a comedian. She was on the
She's
show.
amazing.
She's
She's
so
so
She's
good.
amazing. Survival of the thickest.
Yes.
I love her.
And so I saw her stand up in 2020, a Netflix special. And it was the first time. And the way she was talking about having wild curly hair and being thick and being herself, I was like, wait, that's an option? Because I didn't realize it was an option at that kind of level to have everybody see you. Because sometimes it's, we want to be seen, but we're also afraid of being seen because
Yeah.
what if people judge us? And so I was so inspired by her. I talked about how she inspired me with my TED Talk, and she actually reshared a bit of my TED Talk on her Instagram.
Nice.
And talked about how important it is that you be a whole ass human. And it was just lovely to be seen. But the thing is had I not seen myself at that level, I might not have been
Exactly.
encouraged to do that. And I did just see her again here in LA for my birthday. I went to see her comedy show. And one of the lines that she gave us is she said, the tools you use to survive are not the tools that you will use to thrive. And I feel like so much of the tools that we all give to the people that we work with are about moving to that space of thriving, but also acknowledging the tools that we use to survive. And our old story, that's what we use to survive. But if we want to thrive, we got to rewrite some of that shit.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I love her.
She's hilarious.
So
She's awesome.
good.
It's
She's
so
awesome.
funny.
But I can relate, right? I mean, that's how I got the courage to write the James Redfield, who we're actually going to spend time with again this year. And I think because I was like, I see myself, like, with that the whole like synchronicity thing, and
Uh-huh.
you know what I mean. It's finding like similar stories and journeys, right? And we relate, and again, that's why we
We
should
do.
share them because then we're inspiring the next. And as you were thinking about like the binary things, I mean, we talk about it all the time. Like none of us really fit in boxes, Like I remember like in high school. It was like I was tanner, right? And so it was like in
Uh-huh.
high school I
Yeah.
was too dark. And then, and then in like, oh, it's like I'm too light. It's like, oh, you're light. You're this. And it's like and then before it was like my hair was too curly. And then I started to wear like straight, it was too straight. And then, oh, you don't look Nicaraguan. And other people are like, and then but then we go to like, places where embassies like, oh my God, you're so brown, you're so Nicaraguan looking. Right? And it's like it's like you're never going to you have to know who you are and like just like that's what I loved about your TED talk. It's like I'm not going to sit here and try to justify to you how I feel inside. You know what I
Uh-huh.
mean? This
Yeah.
is how I feel. I'm brown, and that's the end of it. But I mean, but there is that world. And so we have to know what our story is, who we are, how we define. And there's no like what I love about her is that she talks a little bit about that, right? Like in certain communities, she's seen as too light and she's seen as, and the other ones she's seen as too thick and the other ones are like, oh, you're not thick enough. And so it's like you never win. And so you have to just be like, it's not about winning. It's about you owning your story, your own journey, and which I loved about your TED Talk. So
Yeah. Yeah.
should I
Yeah.
ask? Oh, go ahead. You were gonna say something?
No, I don't know. I don't.
Yeah.
There's just so many things to talk about.
I know.
There's so
So
many
many
things to
You
talk
relate
about.
to that because we were just talking about that yesterday.
I know that like the whole line about what helps you survive isn't what helps you thrive necessarily.
Yeah.
That reminds me of a lot of like the values work that we do
Yeah.
and the motivation, right? That there's sort of when shit gets hard, there's part of you that kicks into survival mode. And what are the things that you need to do to get yourself out of the hole? But those are different from the things that are going to shoot you to the next level.
And
Right.
motivation is different than trauma, right?
Right.
So like, I'm motivated by vision, but my trauma is safety, it's financial, right? But it's not my motivation. And so that can get really confusing in times of stress. And so knowing like what your motivation is really key. Because is it really that's like you were saying, thrive, survive? Like the whole thing about being like, oh, I need to have finances. That's not about thriving. That's surviving. My thriving is when I'm visioning. Right. And so
Yeah.
knowing that, like you're saying about the tools, like I still think, like in my workbook, I still talk about the same tools that worked for you before are going to work for you now. However, there is a distinction, right? Like
Right.
about the thriving and the surviving. And that's like your motivation and your values. So yeah, I mean, we could go on a whole.
Anyway,
Oh, yeah.
the last thing I want to say before I let you take over is that I love the visualization and the feeling of the wording of you contain multitudes. Like I
Mm.
think that is like I think it's like mind like you said that and I'm like I love those words together so much, right? Because it's that acknowledgement that there's a whole universe inside of you,
Yeah.
and all of it is okay, So I love that.
And
I'm
it's layered,
yeah.
and I think that's why we like that one. I like that one question. I won't ask you this one today. I'll ask you a different one. That's why I like the question about the childhood dream because you can have 5 different childhood dreams. Like I have 5 different ones. I know we all do, and they all have different characteristics. And that's like for me when I thought about her saying that, I was like, that's the multitude. You can have these different characteristics that live in you and at different moments.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I want to ask you a question now.
Okay.
So when I know we've done it because it's in the workbook. So, but I think it'd be really cool to unpack it here with the guests, right? It's like if you had the $40 billion to solve one global problem, what would you solve? And pick something you're not working on.
I had $40 billion to solve one global problem. I would
Not working on.
not working on. Ooh, I would definitely put some money towards conservation of Mother Earth and protecting a lot of the natural environments. And
Okay.
then using that to create jobs, economy,
Wait. Let's do conservation first. Woo-hoo. Okay.
conservation.
So basically, we're trying to solve, how would you say, it?
Not
destruction or like
destruction, yes. And the losing of land and
Okay.
Yeah.
I like that, losing on that. Okay. Now, the G7's going to give you the money. But
Okay.
they need to know in 3 to
She's like,
5
yes, they
steps.
are.
Yes, they are. 3 to 5 steps how you would solve it.
Well,
What would you
one,
do
give
first? Yeah.
land back to Indigenous stewards, which is not just North America. Indigenous stewards are global.
Uh-huh.
So find Indigenous stewards to steward that land, create jobs, and pay them to steward the land, to do what they intuitively have known for generations in caring for that land and ensuring that they have the resources to be able to do that. I feel if there's more Indigenous land steward, it can help solve some of the problems that we're seeing as a globe, right? Because climate crisis, the things that impact the globe impact all of us.
So tell me how you would give that land back. The first one.
Purchase land and then turn it over to stewards. A lot of like national forests and things which are currently under attack, buying those back and putting them back in the hands of the people who can care for them.
Okay.
That would be the first step.
And then the second one, create jobs and pay them. How would you do that?
Create jobs. So making decisions on what would be needed, creating jobs, creating a board, creating a community or trust steward round table of sorts to direct the decisions on that land. And then the third is creating protections for that land with using the stewards as consultants.
So how would they do that? What do you envision there?
I would envision, so if I go to Colorado, for example, Colorado is just recently returned a bunch of buffalo, which is a very big deal for our community and to some of the Indigenous communities there. So one of the things of creating that would be, okay, what do you need on this land? Asking the people, what do you need? What does the land need? And then with $40 billion, I'd be able to provide those resources. Housing is like a big thing too. So like creating housing on that land would be some of those steps.
Awesome. So from your answer, of course, we could do this like with 3 other questions and all that. It makes a lot of sense to me. So because I want people to see this because this is one of our key questions to understand your value proposition and like how you answered it and how we heard your whole discussion right now. It's like your first step is giving people back, well, showing them and giving people back their power.
Ooh.
That's your first step. So when I was thinking about it, right, like that's why the stories, right?
Right.
That's why you help people unpack their stories. That's why you help them. And it's like your step number 1, because they have to understand first. So your first thing is like, they got to know that they have autonomy, they have power. Number 1, before you even start working with them. And then the second thing for you is the community part, right? Like as you were talking about the decision making, bringing people together or connecting them. Like, and then I know that from you. That's what
Yeah.
you do naturally.
Yes.
But then your third one is once you have your power back, you've shown it, I've connected you, I've created some community with you, given you some resources. Now we can dive into what do you need and solutions and execution.
Yeah.
So you don't start with full on execution. You start on first, like, let's unpack your power. Let's show it to you. And I know that's how you've helped me. It's like, let's do that first. Let's get you around like-minded people. Let me connect you. And then now let's go do the work. And so would you say, Victoria, that's how you do everything?
Pretty much, absolutely how I do
Amazing.
everything. It's getting the power back. And I feel like for me, it kind of goes into a part of my story. Because a lot of times when we ask people this question, what do you want?
Yeah,
Times we're still in that conditioning of whatever old
exactly.
story. And we might be giving an answer of what we think the other person wants to hear or what we've been taught
Yeah.
to say or how to answer that. So doing that work and what you just talked about is like a framework of, one term of it is helping people step into the power of their story. It's like those first sessions with people really are listening because it's not usually their first answer. Because if you would ask me what I wanted, I think when we started working together was the first time I talked about, being an author. But for a long time it was, I want to, I want to be successful. Like that was
Yeah.
the response, which is very vague and
Yep.
generic. And it wasn't until we got deeper into the story that I could identify that. So I find the same thing with when I work with people. And then the second is community, because we talked earlier about the witness. We have to witness ourselves first, then whatever identity work we're doing. And healing identity story is one of the ways we do that. Witnessing ourselves, but then being witnessed in community or amongst our peers, colleagues, is how we maintain and kind of set that identity.
Yeah. And then you're like, then the person's ready to be like, what do
Yeah.
you want?
What do you want? Yeah. What do you need?
Yeah.
Because now you're going to answer it from that authentic place. You're going to answer it from that
Exactly.
place because that fear, that vulnerability, the
Yep.
conditioning all has like the masks, as we say, have all fallen
Yeah.
away.
That's amazing. And that's why like your branding work is so key too, because you do all this work beforehand before going into creating the brand with someone too.
Yep.
So that's so
Yeah.
cool. So that's your
I think one of the things that's important, I think for like our listeners though, and what I want people to take away, like you are very in tune with your story.
yeah.
You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And so like I don't think that any of this is like mind blowing for you right now, because I think that
Oh,
you've
and she's done the workbook.
you should totally exactly. But like what I would want people to think about, for example, is that it would be really easy with sort of like the perspective and the mindset that somebody like you has, to say when asked about themselves, they might say something like, oh, I'm really into restorative justice. Restorative justice is super important for me, and that's what I do. But that's really only like the tip of the iceberg, right?
Yeah.
Like if somebody like like think about like a networking situation kind of a thing, right? And somebody asks you, Victoria, tell me about you. And you start saying, well, I'm really into restorative justice and whatever else. That's one way to do it. And that's okay. But the other way is when you say, man, one of the things that's really important to me is to give people their power back, right?
And shift old narratives.
Shift old narratives, create the community within yourself, around yourself, all of that, right? It's so much more
And
powerful.
I do all this before we start on an assignment, right? But one, that helps you keep your price, because then they understand this is a long process. This is not like I'm just going to go into your brand. There's a lot of inner work before. So it helps people, one, validate like why my packages are the way they are. Second, help show your worth, like that, I mean, this is my power. I know how to give people back their power, shift old narratives. I know how to get people to witness you, see you, so that what you're doing is mask off. So imagine how much more powerful it is than just being like, I help people unpack stories. No, it's way more than that, because
Right.
it's like you're helping them. Like one thing is like, yeah, I can help you rewrite your story. No. Like for your story to be the one that lands, we got to do all this work.
And you become undeniable. You become a
Yeah.
recognizable brand in your story, in who you are, and you're being yourself. And there's layers to that. But musicians, celebrities, a lot of the people with this high influence that many entrepreneurs or leaders, trailblazers seek, is that recognition, not always for monetary, but for the people who they're wanting to serve, to more easily find them and recognize them, and to the point where you become undeniable because you're so clear in who you are, you're so clear in your mission, your values, your goals, what you're doing, that people can't help but say yes to you.
Mhm.
And there's a process there, but that's the benefit of it. And that even if you get a no, you've said yes to yourself, you've chosen
Exactly.
yourself, that you know that the no, like there's the different sayings, rejection is just, protection, or, it just, it wasn't aligned, and then you can move on and you find something that is
Well,
aligned.
more importantly, you know what you need. That's what I love about your
Yeah.
third step. It's like you actually know what you need. It's not based on what other people told you need. It's what you
That
actually need.
part.
And that's what I loved about knowing about Arthur.
Yeah.
Let's go back to that, because
You
then I
know what you
realized
need.
this is what I need. It's not what other people are telling me I need, because I hear that all the time. It's what do I need? What do you need? Right. Anyways, I
And
loved this.
we're not used to especially as Latinas, Esther, being able to be like, yep, I can tell you exactly what I need. We're so
Exactly.
used to being, let me tell you what everybody else needs. And then let me make sure that everybody else has it. And it's been a journey to be like, no, what do I need?
Exactly.
Where do I shine first?
And it helped me realize, like, Merlin was showing Arthur science. They were going in the ocean and he was teaching him all about fish and predators and things. And at the same time, spirituality. And I'm like, that is me, right? And so like all those things, it's like, I need both. And it makes you unapologetic about it, Anyways, I can speak all day on wonders about Victoria's approaches and all that stuff. I loved this. I don't know if do you want to say anything else?
No,
Or Victoria, you want to?
honestly, the only last thing that I would want to add, and the real reason that I brought it up is because, like Victoria said it earlier as well. Like, for all of our listeners, you're not basic. You know what I mean? Like, this story and the way that we've framed it for Victoria, that exists for all of you,
Yeah.
for each of us. All of us have our own unique framework, and that's our own power. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
And if
So
you want to unpack your story and your main character energy, reach out to Victoria. So, Victoria, would you like to close us with anything?
Yeah, to all the listeners, just first off, like, your story matters. Like, and there's reason. And people need to connect to your story, because the more that we have people do that, we connect back to ourselves and each other. And it doesn't matter the platform. I do a lot of work. I do a lot of work on social media, but there's other stages and spaces that you can be seen and that your story can be heard. And if you are wanting to really maximize your impact, really letting your story be shared is a great way to do that.
Yeah.
And if you're feeling stuck, first step is ask yourself, who is a character, fictional, or, even a celebrity or persona that you see yourself in, or that you connect with, or that you're like, I really aspire to be them. And then get out a pen and paper and ask yourself, what do I like about them? Or what do I appreciate? And then reflect it back on yourself and rewrite it and say, so if I took Michelle Buteau, for example, I appreciate how unapologetic she is. Rewrite it. I appreciate how unapologetic I am.
Exactly.
And I feel
Embody
like
it.
that's a great first place to start. So
Love
this
that.
has been amazing and an honor to be with you both. And because the truth in my story is that the woman that I was, like, years ago when I met Dr. Esther, like, I was too afraid to even share my own story with the world. And now I've transformed, and this is a gift. So find your people, find your community, and thank you so much for being a part of mine.
Yes. And Victoria came to our
Okay.
retreat, which was awesome.
yeah.
The retreat changed my life. It's the visioning, right? It's the seeing, like, and you deserve it. I feel like that's a beautiful message that you remind people. I feel like we all do in the work that we're doing, remind people that they deserve to be the best versions of themselves.
Yes, totally.
So
I
good.
loved it.
Amazing. Thank
So
you
how do
so
people
much.
find you? And we're going to also
Yeah.
share in the show notes a link to your TEDx and you, but love for people listening. How do they find you?
Thank you. So LinkedIn is one of the best places to find me at Victoria Carrington Chavez. And then I have a Substack under the Story Saloon, which is where I'm sharing a variety of stories. And then Lilac and Aspen is my website, but there is some changes soon. So I will be announcing those changes as they come out. But right now you can find me at lilacaspen.com.
Awesome.
And social media, TikTok, Instagram, Victoria Tells Stories.
Awesome.
Incredible. Thank you so much, Victoria. This was amazing, as I knew it would be. And I know all of our listeners enjoyed this too. And I hope it was just what you needed.
Thank you so much, and have a wonderful day, and best to all of you.
Bye.
Living my own way. Seeing light even on the darkest of days. I trust myself and know my worth. There is nothing but stars behind me. So can we go higher?